All right, we're back with you, Sports Talk, on a Friday night heading into the weekend. Mike Morgan, always on the move. Sometimes he's with us on Thursday. Sometimes he's with us on Friday. Sometimes he's with us on Tuesdays. That's why he is Mike Morgan on the move. He's sort of like that, you go to the arcade, they have that game, what is it, the mole game, where you try to hit the mole?
Like a mole.
Pops up here, pops up there. That's Mike. He pops up here, he pops up there, he pops up here. He is brought to you by State Farm agent Gary Patterson. For 35 years, Gary's been serving the real estate needs from Lugoff to Lexington, Columbia to Blythewood. Your auto, home, life insurance, and business insurance can all be handled by Gary, who spends countless hours helping South Carolinians with all their insurance needs and making a difference in the community. Go check out GaryPatterson.net today, and he'll go over the best plans for you and your family. That's GaryPatterson.net.
Brought to you by Love Chevy. Act now for spectacular savings on the best selection of new Chevys. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Together, let's drive.
There he is over there. Nope, there he is over there. Hit him over here. Mike Morgan, the mole, on the move. Good evening.
Good evening, Donkey Kong. How are you?
It's pin the tail on the donkey. You ever play that? Did you ever play pin the tail on the donkey?
When I was like 5 at a birthday party, I believe.
Well, isn't that still isn't that a popular game for drunken college students to play? Maybe.
I don't think many college kids are playing pin the tail on the donkey, Phil. I think your age demographic is you're a little out of your depth there.
Ain't no question.
You and the college kids not seeing eye to eye.
Well, I know I played pin the tail on something when I was in college. Might not have been a donkey. Hello.
I think that was in Myrtle Beach, actually, but that's a whole other story.
So, College World Series, Championship Series.
Yeah,
Surprise, you got two SEC teams facing off.
Well, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I think you and some other folks asked me, who do you think the favorite is? And these have been my two teams since the Field of 64 came out. And it's very rare that you get those two right, because usually there's it's a little less chalkish than football and sometimes basketball is. But I thought these were the two best teams all along, and they really have showed that throughout the tournament. I was a little bit nervous for A&M, with the injury to Montgomery, who's basically their best player. But they haven't missed a beat, and these are the two most complete teams. And if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be the SEC's 10th title in the last 15 Omahas. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, the thing about the SEC, if this were the original SEC winning all these titles and making that kind of claim, I get it. But this isn't your grandfather's SEC. I mean, this is your kid's SEC. They've taken in all these teams now, and they're SEC teams, but see what I'm saying? They weren't born SEC teams. They were adopted as SEC teams. I guess you love your adopted kids as much as you love your the kids you birth, I guess. Tell me about that, Mike.
Well, first off, those 10 titles I referenced, none of them are the newest blood.
None of the adoptees.
Well, yeah. Now, Carolina came in 92. I don't think you would dare tell the Gamecock fans tuning into your show, which probably comprises about 65% of your audience, that they don't count as SEC teams or SEC champions. I mean, they're without question an SEC program.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 of the last 15, it still holds up. Those are all original SEC plus Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas hasn't won one of these things.
See, and Paul Feinbaum said in 1992, why do you want to bring South Carolina into the SEC? South Carolina will never contribute anything in a positive way to the SEC. I'm just saying.
You remember what Paul Feinbaum said in 1992?
Absolutely. It was that created quite the stir in our state. Were you in our state in 92?
No.
Where
I
were
was
you
not,
in 92?
Gosh, 92. I was in high school. But my first job, as a true paid employee, I guess, was in Columbus, Georgia, and the SEC baseball tournament got its one and done in Columbus in '97. Was also the home of the SEC women's basketball tournament.
Oof.
Was also the home of Olympic softball. And they managed shortly after to lose all three and never get any of them back. But I remember Paul hosting the afternoon show there. My boss came in and had the sports page in his hand. And he was all fired up about something. And I said, I already read the Columbus Ledger-Inquirer. He goes, no, Mike, this is the Birmingham paper. I said, well, why are you reading the Birmingham paper? He said, because Paul Feinbaum just trashed our beloved city of Columbus and said we should never host another SEC baseball tournament. And the way you find Columbus, Georgia, is you follow the smell.
Oh.
He said, I want you to go after him for the next 3 hours. And I said, but then you're just giving it attention. Like, that's kind of what a shock jock wants. And I've been on the Paul Feinbaum show. I know Paul fairly well. I like Paul personally.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, Paul was not the TV personality that you see today. He was a columnist for the Birmingham paper. I'm not sure if he even gotten into radio yet. And was very controversial because he was a very strong opinion, very critical of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised, to bring it back to your original point, that in 1992, Paul figured, okay, new blood in the SEC, I'm going to write a scathing article about South Carolina.
No, he probably wanted Florida State. He probably wanted Florida State at that time when they were.
Well, so did the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
you know that story, right?
Refresh me.
Okay. So in 91, 92, when they were looking to expand, their golden goose was supposed to be Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida State, many people with the university were all in. Like, this is a grand opportunity to go to the best conference in the land, and we're kind of a true SEC football type program anyway, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one Bobby Bowden who said, why would I want to go and play that schedule? No, thank you. I'll just stick with where I'm at, and we'll do the ACC, and we'll go ahead and be very happy in that conference. That's the reason why Florida State is now in a lawsuit to get out of the league. That is the reason why Florida State was not in the SEC in 1992. It's because Bobby Bowden knew it would be more difficult to win a national championship in the SEC.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? He made the right call because
he was right.
He dominated the ACC
right.
and got everything. That's why, with Clemson's situation, and I know they're looking at it financially and feeling like they're getting the short shrift, and same thing with Florida State. But, I mean, I've always compared it when you talk about the SEC and you talk about the ACC when it comes to football in particular. I mean, I've always compared it to the SEC being like South Chicago and the ACC being like Beverly Hills. I mean, the point is it's a lot easier if you're a Clemson to make a run through the ACC than it will be if you join the SEC or even if you decide to join the Big Ten. Clemson's in a great spot from a competitive standpoint right now. They can continue to dominate the league and not have to play, at least publicly, the big pay-for-play game that so many other schools are very openly playing to attract major talent. Clemson can still get good players good enough to win where they are without having to show their hand, so to speak. Other schools don't mind. Other schools don't mind letting you know, hey, we're going to pay this quarterback X millions of dollars, and we're going to give this guy, this number of millions of dollars.
All right, since you've opened this can up, hold off all further questions about Omaha, the Braves, anything else, because this, to me, is a hugely relevant conversation. As you know, J.C. Sherbert and I do a national college football podcast every week, J.C. and Morgan. We invite your audience to tune in.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you we have broken this down.
Well, by the way, this is a national
Yes.
show too. We're on the internet, so we're international. We're worldwide.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Worldwide.
Very, very true. My
anyway, go
guess
ahead.
is you spend a little more time on the in-state matters than we do, and that's why we respect you. For
we
who
have
you
not
are.
been following the what's it called, the Euro Cup. We have not been following that. I can promise you.
Well, you're doing the 2%ers a disservice, but we'll cater to them another segment. I want to make sure we finish this. I want to make sure we finish this up.
All right.
Because this is very important, because it's going to affect one of the primary schools you cover on a day-to-day basis sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've talked about it. I know you have very great sources over there in the upstate.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question that Florida State and this is a day-to-day thing. It's all
Mm-hmm.
The story never stops. They are doing everything in their power to get out of that league. So, I mean, everything you said, it makes a lot of sense. You did gloss over the fact that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be, at some point, generating about an extra $40 million a year in revenue than their ACC and Big 12 counterparts. And therein lies the biggest reason why, yes, it would behoove Clemson and Florida State to stay where they are and pile up more wins and participate perhaps in more championship ceremonies. But it's pretty hard to continue to get to that point if you're that far behind financially. And so I believe, and you know this, Phil, there were people in the state of South Carolina, we don't need to get into names, that were trying to act as if they had the inside source, and they reported it 3 years ago. It's done deal. Clemson's leaving. And then 2 years ago, done deal. My source just told me. And it never happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept – the people that I talked to knew about that contract, that television contract by an employer I'm pretty familiar with, that it was ironclad. But I'm here to tell you the people I talk to now, and I know some fairly high up Florida State people as well, that they've done the math. And even if it costs them millions and millions and millions of dollars to get out, that long term it's the right play. And long term, it just seems to me that I don't think the ACC is going to have Florida State and Clemson in that league unless something dramatically changes in the next couple of years.
I mean,
do you disagree with
no,
this?
no, I do not. I do not. But Jim
Okay.
Phillips yesterday said the following. He said, we're going to fight it with every effort that we can.
Sure.
With what has been agreed upon twice, the grant of rights deserves to be executed, and so we have taken that position. It's damaging to the league. It's harmful to the league. This is a beautiful league that's been around a long time, 70 years. Sounds like Trump. This is a beautiful league. It's been around a long time, 70 years. And it means, and it's meant a lot to this part of the country and to college sports. And now it will mean a lot to California, Northern California. And the success that this league has had, the opportunities this league has had for young people. I'll stand up against any league about what is delivered for young people. So we're going to fight. I'm going to fight, and the courts will ultimately decide. And we believe that everybody knows what was in that contract back then, and it was celebrated, and people were excited. A new network with ESPN. We just lost Maryland, and it was a chance for unity and togetherness and the rest of it. And there was a unanimous acceptance of this is a great deal for the ACC. And that has changed in the minds of a couple, referring to Clemson and Florida State. So that is the commissioner's position. And, I mean, you're right. You know, I guess Clemson and Florida State can spin themselves to the breaking point to get out and feel like they're going to make it up somewhere else, whether it's in the SEC or the Big Ten. I mean, are you saying that that's the approach, that they're willing to spend whatever it takes, both in terms of fees and the penalties, to get out of it, knowing they can or believing they can make it up in some other league?
As best I can tell from people that I trust, and I'm not trying to – again, I'm not the guy trying to break headlines. The headline's already been written, so this is not me breaking a story here. The headline's already been written. They are determined to get out, and I just feel like and Jim Phillips, everything he said is what you expect the commissioner of the ACC to say. And he's doing everything he can. I mean, all you have to do is look at what happened to the Pac when they lost Southern Cal, Oregon, and then eventually Colorado, and then it just completely imploded. That's the fear, obviously. There's rumors around there that are also that Virginia and North Carolina are looking to go to the SEC. Like, there's a lot of things going on. But legally, Florida State and Clemson have done everything imaginable. Now, Florida State has been more out in the open. They have been very just completely clear about the fact that they are doing everything in their power. I think Clemson, and again, I know you follow this as well as anybody, I think they have been a little more hush-hush about it, if you will. But that doesn't mean they're not doing everything in their power. And watching Florida State to kind of go first in the deep end of the pool, and if Florida State is successful at doing it, well, now all of a sudden that's a problem. And so it's kind of like, you know, you're in a relationship, you're living under the same roof, and one person wants out and one person wants to keep it together. And you because of certain financial arrangements, you're both on the mortgage, what have you, on the mortgage, and you decide, okay, well, let's just, even though we're together, we'll date other people, but we'll live under the same roof. How often does that work out, Phil? Not a whole heck of a lot. A lot of awkward conversations at the kitchen table. You know, could you pass the salt? Sure, anytime, you dirty slut. I mean, that's not the kind of stuff you want. That's not the kind of stuff that you want. I'm sorry.
I don't think we can have that kind of language on this family show.
I know. Well, so thankfully, it's a primetime show outside of the Disney hours. But, no, I mean, in all seriousness, like, clearly, it's absolutely evident that you have programs that are desperately trying to get out. And I don't think when you're that determined to get out, I understand the only reason they're still in is because the contract was that good, was that secure. I won't bore everybody with why that contract was agreed upon way back when, but you had the launching of the ACC network. You had it was good to have security to know that, you know, you weren't going to have a Texas Big 12 situation. There was a lot of things going on at that time. It made sense. But the landscape, ever changing in college sports as we know it, right? It is one constant day of flux after the next. The landscape has gotten to the point where those two obviously want out. And if you obviously want out and you're willing to spend millions of dollars or lose millions of dollars, however you want to look at it, to get out of it, I just don't know how you can withstand that. I just don't. And again, this is a problem that Greg Sankey doesn't worry about because nobody wants to leave the SEC. People want to get in it. Nobody wants to get out of it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get out of the Big Ten. People want to get in it. Nobody wants to get out of it.
Yep.
The ACC has a problem because its two premier programs in the sport of college football clearly want out.
And we got to get out of this because we're running short on time, my friend. But great stuff as always. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Enjoyed it,
Thanks,
guys.
Mike.
Take care.
As always, Mike Morgan bringing some heat tonight on the ACC and Clemson and Florida State.
Silly me, I was going to ask him why he thought the ACC wasn't competitive at the College World Series.
Never were going to get to that part. I was going to ask him about the Braves pitching staff. We'll be back.